Technical error with my cereal.
Thank you so much.
Yes, there's sweet and unsweet.
All right, y'all ready to talk about contracts? Yeah. All right. So. You just
I love
leave
my
them there.
cards on the
Turn this off real quick. Yeah, you just leave it on the table.
So unsouthern of me.
It's all good. We'll get it. People will nibble on it for the rest of the day, I promise. So how are y'all? Good. Good. First and foremost, before we get started on the actual contract, I wanted to show you a couple of resources that we have on our connectkw.com page, so that you know about them if you don't already. It's right here. Connectkw.com. Hey. And once you get there, you're going to click over here on this contracts tab. And we have a couple of things on here. It's taking a little while to load. For some reason, it's really slow back here. So bear with me. I promise it's working.
Has that always been there, that chat?
It's been there for, this is the office webpage. It's been there for a while.
So this is off the home screen on
Yes, connectkw.com. So right here, this is a 2-hour video with the proposed changes to the contract that Avis did for us. It's a good video. You can see her up here on the top, and then you can actually see on the screen exactly what she's talking about every single step of the way. And then every single paragraph of the current contract is broken down paragraph by paragraph. I gotta edit that one right there. For some reason, I have 2 paragraph 5s, but this is really paragraph 3, and I'll just delete that later. So you can go and let's say that you're sitting in front of your clients. I've had agents in our office do this where their client said, hey, what does paragraph 5 mean? And they pulled up the video and said, well, the best person for us to learn that about would probably be my broker. So let me just go ahead and play this quick video for you. And they've done that. They've played paragraph 5 for their client. It worked out great because it was coming directly from Avis. And what our intention in doing these videos originally is breaking the whole paragraph down into layman's terms so that you didn't have to worry about trying to decipher what all the legality of the whole paragraph is. It's just, here's what it says, here's what it really means, here's how it affects you. So that's what we did for this right here, just to make it an easier resource for you to go to. And if you wanted to learn about that, or hey, maybe you couldn't sleep one night and you needed to fall asleep, you can put videos on of Avis reading contracts.
Did you make her change clothes in between each?
She chose to do that. I don't know why she did it. It's all one contract, but she went and she purposely did this. She did. I think she was going with like summer colors. No, she said spring, fall, summer, and then spring, fall, and summer is what she ended up with. Anyways, yeah, she did that intentionally. That was not my idea. I would have just said, well, whatever you want. So anyways, that is there as a resource for you. You can go to that anytime you want to. There's no password or anything like that on this website yet because the only people I tell about it are people here in the office. So it's connectkw.com, not to be confused with kwconnect.com, which is the corporate version of it. I thought that this would be an easier way to do it. I've realized that I've sent a lot of people to the wrong pages because I've confused myself by saying, oh, that's on kwconnect.com, when in actuality it's the exact opposite. So, and then there's a resources tab right here. That's a useful place for you to go as well. This just has different links that you can click on. This will take you, if you end up on the wrong Connect KW and you meant to go to KW Connect, there's a link for that. You can just click that right there. And then a page that a lot of people don't know about is this national stats page here. When you click that, it's going to take you to the most recent market data reports for every single major metropolitan area in the entire United States. So if you want to know what's going on in Tyler, you can just click this button right here, full report, and it'll give you the exact statistics based upon their MLS at any point in time, and it'll give you their year-over-year trends and everything like that too. Or If you're more interested in what's going on in our neck of the woods, you click the kwstats.com button, put in your MLS ID, and then let's say you wanted to know what was going on in Round Rock East. You just type in RRE there, click enter, click create report, boom, there you go. You just saved at least 2 hours of work that you would have been doing in the MLS, and it gives you the instant stats and the year-over-year trends for Round Rock East, or Georgetown East, or Georgetown West, or you name it in the MLS, you type those letters in, it's going to come up. It saves you a ton of time. This could be a huge benefit for you in your listing presentations. Just sitting down and showing them, here's what the trends are in our area right now. Here's kind of what you've got in your range of competition as far as all those fun numbers. So I want to make sure you guys knew about that. All right, now let's talk about the contract. So paragraph 1, what goes there?
Don't leave her alone. Okay,
Yeah.
so-
Yeah, best thing to do in your conversation when you're getting ready to sit down and put the offer together is when you get your mortgage payment or your mortgage bill from the bank every single month, what name do you want to see? And make sure that it really is their name. If it's Bob or Robert and they want to put Bob on there, it needs to kind of reflect what the what their license says.
Should we ask for their identification, and now that there's so much?
Ideally, you would have asked for their identification once you got to the point where you were going to go and show them property.
Okay.
So,
I'm thinking listing, I guess.
yeah, same thing for the listing. And that's a really good thing to do. And the reason why is when they call you and say, hey, we want to list our house, first and foremost, take them through the pre-listing lead sheet. If you don't know what that is, I can show you later. It's all on our coaching documents. But that's going to ask you questions and things like that. It's going to give you questions to ask them. And then always give them the tax record afterward and double check to make sure that those are the names that are listed on the house and that there aren't any other surprise names on there that you need to know about. Let's say that it's a husband and wife and turns out that the two names that are on there are actually the husband and the ex-wife, or the wife and the ex-husband. So those are important things to see when you're sitting down for a listing appointment, and you've got Bill and Susan, and for some reason it's got Bill and Janine listed on the title. You may want to ask a question before you get there instead of being in front of both of them and say, "Hey, Bill, who's Janine?" That way you know what you're up against. Because if you don't do that research ahead of time and you wait until all the way down the line at the end of the transaction, now you've gotten to a point where you got to go and find Janine and see if she's really willing to sell her interest in the house. Now, chances are there's going to be a decree of divorce that's awarded the house to just one of them. But if you see names on there that don't make sense and you know that you've never talked to one of those people before, you need to figure that out sooner rather than later. Or maybe it's an estate and the parents have passed away and now it's in 6 different children's names and they all have an interest in the property. You only need one name to list the property, but all 6 of them have to agree to sign at closing. And if they don't all agree, you can't sell the property. So there was an instance recently, or it was actually about a year ago now, where one of our agents had sold the property, and it was actually it was an estate, and one of the heirs to the estate was in a prison in Alaska, and they had to send a notary to the prison in Alaska to get him to sign those things, and it took a while to track it down because his family didn't know where he was at.
Yeah, I was involved in one of my last deals in California. Was through Comerica Bank, and it was a trust, and there were multiple siblings. So in the case, let's say you got 5 or 6 brothers and sisters, is it good? Is it better that they're going through a trust, type of situation, or guys handling the executor type thing?
Yeah.
A situation like that.
Yeah, if there's an executor to the trust, you can run everything through the executor to the trust. And if they've been given the all-powerful the ability to be the power of attorney for the entire thing and run everything through that one person. That's completely okay.
I mean, that's what I did. They even gave me the listing, the whole 9 yards. I never met any of the numbers.
Yeah. Now, if there was no will and it's all kind of just been passed down to anybody who has ownership in the property, that's not a luxury that you're able to afford at that point.
You
gotta go and get
them all in
every single signature. That's why in document we still have the ability to add signatures, and there have been cases where we had to add 8 different signature lines and 8 different places with initials on contracts.
There only has to be one name in this paragraph?
No, I'm talking about the listing agreement.
Okay.
The listing agreement is completely different. You only need one name on the listing agreement. Now, if in this place, in this right here, let's say that there were 6 sellers that all had to be in agreement to sell the property. Right here, this is one of the places where you could use paragraph 11. So if you can't fit all the names right there, you can type in here, you put C paragraph 11. And then what you would do is you would go down here to paragraph 11. We know special provisions, also the place where nothing really goes, unless it's one of these things. Then you can put the name of every single person that is an owner in that property. And the sooner you know that information, the better off you're going to be. Because it's not fun getting down to the line and realizing, oh no, we've got to go find Uncle Joe. And then you find out Uncle Joe's in prison. So yeah, anyways, just make sure you know what the names that are supposed to go on there are, and you look at the tax record to make sure of it. And don't just go off the MLS. If you're going to be putting in an offer on a home and you're representing the buyers, look it up in the tax record as well, because the names on this contract need to reflect the names on the tax record. That's not to say this document can't be amended. It just has to start off with what you know as a matter of fact. All right, so number 2, what goes here?
Legal description of the property.
Legal description of the property. Yes, absolutely. So the lot, the block, the information about the subdivision is going to go there on that top part. Right there, that's where that's going to go. And then the city and the county is going to go there. And then the informal address, the informal description, which is known as the actual property address, is going to go right here. The reason they use lot and block is because those are covered with meets and bounds, and that's how they've decided upon what properties are going to be laid where. So the informal address, the informal description is what we know as the property address. So 2422 Brook Hollow. Now you know where I live. So that would go right there. And then B, improvements. You don't have to put anything in here, but it is important for people to know this. The house, garage, and all other fixtures and improvements attached to the above described real property, including without limitation the following permanently installed built-in items, if any, all equipment and appliances, balances, screens, shutters, awnings, and wall-to-wall carpeting. Wall-to-wall carpeting. Can you imagine anyone trying to take their carpet? I'm sure it's happened. If it's in here, it's happened. Mirrors, ceiling fans, attic fans, mailboxes, television antennas, mounts and brackets for televisions and speakers, heating and air conditioning units, security and fire detection equipment, wiring, plumbing and lighting fixtures, chandeliers, water softener system, kitchen equipment, garage door openers, cleaning equipment, shrubbery, landscaping, outdoor cooking equipment, and all other property owned by the seller and attached to the above described real property. So, easiest way, I'm sure you guys have heard the description in your real estate classes. If you flip the whole house upside down, stuff falls, you can take it. If you flip the whole house upside down, something stuck to the wall or something stuck that maybe you wouldn't think got stuck or would have been stuck, it's supposed to go with it. So if you take that picture on the wall, the picture on the wall is not stuck to the property, the nail is. However, if you take a bookcase and you go and grab a bunch of nails and you nail that bookcase into the wall, that's technically now become real property because you have attached it to the home. So that would be one of these things that would be considered an improvement. Accessories. The following describe related accessories, if any: window air conditioning units, stove, fireplace screens, curtains and rods, blinds, window shades, draperies and rods, door keys, mailbox keys, above ground pool, swimming pool equipment and maintenance accessories, artificial fire logs and controls for garage doors, entry gates, and other improvements and accessories. So those are all things that are supposed to stay with the property as well. You wouldn't really want to take the garage door over with you anyways, right? All right, and then exclusion. So if any of these things are not going to go with the property, it needs to go in paragraph D right here. A lot of times people will make a mistake of putting the things that they don't want to take with them in just the seller's disclosure. Well, the seller's disclosure is just that, a disclosure about the home. It is not a legally binding contract. So if in the seller's disclosure they said that they were going to be taking the curtains that are in the master bedroom, and it doesn't end up in here, guess what? You have every right to argue that you need those master bedroom curtains, because accessories, curtains, and rods is something that goes right here. And this is where a lot of refrigerators are bought. Not in this particular paragraph, but let's say that in the MLS somebody put the refrigerator conveyed with it, and then there was not a non-realty items addendum attached to it that said that you were going to be getting a refrigerator. Guess who's buying a refrigerator? The agent's probably buying a refrigerator at that one time. I know, or a washer and dryer. I know one lady who was notorious for making this mistake, and in her career has bought 3 refrigerators, and none of them she got to keep.
Hey, so what about a stove that's not built in, a range, cooktop, and oven that's not built in?
It's not built in. However, it is an accessory to the home. There is a cutout where that has been placed. A modification to the home has been made in order for it to go there. Now, I'll give you another example about that. So let's say that this is your counter right here. Let's say that you wanted to build a place down over here for your microwave to go. And you've now made a permanent fixture for that microwave. That microwave, although it is not attached to the home, is assumed to convey because you've created a place specific for the microwave now. You've altered the home in order for that microwave to go there.
Well, then you'd always want to mention the refrigerator, right? Because most homes have a cutout for the refrigerator.
In Texas, the refrigerator is not one of the refrigerator, washer, and dryer are the appliances that are not covered by that. So we go right here to.
But it can't hurt to mention it.
It can't hurt to mention it, absolutely not. But those are 2 things those are 3 appliances technically in the state of Texas that are not assumed to convey. Now, if you go to California, refrigerator does convey, right?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. There are states where the refrigerator is assumed to convey based upon the contract. But right here, it does say something about stoves.
Accessories. It's in accessories.
What is kitchen equipment?
Window air conditioner unit, stove, fireplace screens.
There you go.
Oh, stove, okay.
Yeah.
What is the kitchen equipment in that? It's improvements.
I would take that to mean, let's say you put a really nice pot rack or something like that up and you've attached it to the ceiling. That would be one of those things that would be assumed to convey because it is a fixture. You've now made it real property.
Yeah, and built into some degree. I've seen that people even have them like a coffee maker or something like that.
Yeah.
Like a real high end.
Can you expand on the refrigerator, the realtor that bought 3 refrigerators? Exactly what did she or did not do in the contract?
She went off of what the MLS said about the refrigerator conveying, but they never actually added a non-realty items addendum in made it part of the contract. If it's not part of the contract, the sellers have every right to take it because it has not been negotiated as part of the actual contract.
Yeah, so it's assumed that the refrigerator's going
Yes.
unless
Because
there's
the
a non-realty
refrigerator
item.
is not named in
Right.
accessories.
Okay.
And the
Unless
washer
it's
and
a
dryer is
built-in
not
sub-zero or something.
Yeah, if it's a built-in, that's completely different because it is attached to the home and it is fixed.
Or a bill of sale can,
Or a bill of
it
sale, either
doesn't
one.
have to be non-built.
Correct.
Right.
As long as they have some agreement within the two of them that it's going and they have that in writing, whatever they want to do.
So the reason,
Sorry.
the reason that those things stay in B and C are because they're part of the property under paragraph 2.
Correct. They are considered real property in the state of Texas. Like the TV mount. Your TV is on the wall, right? Or is it? Your mount is attached to the wall. Your TV is sitting on the mount. So the brackets and the equipment that goes with the bracket are supposed to stay with the home. And that's an important thing to notate to your sellers is if they intend on taking the bracket with them, that needs to go in exclusions. And once they take that bracket off the wall, if they've left the big hole there where their bolts have gone into, they need to get that repaired because they've altered the property in order to take that.
And that says curtains and drapes too, so they're
Curtains and
not
drapes,
supposed to take those down either.
No.
Those are supposed to stay with the home. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I get to deal with this kind of stuff like all the time, guys. They took the drapes. Were they pretty? Did you like them? No, but they're supposed to stay.
So again, I think I went through this with Avis.
Yeah.
At one point, but I'm getting old and forget. So you're talking about the addendum rather than trying to put it on the contract. You always want to do that addendum to say the refrigerator and the washer and dryer can vary.
The non-realty items addendum. That's
Okay.
correct. Or you could do it like Kim was talking about, a bill of sale. The benefit to doing a bill of sale outside of the contract is that if you put everything on the non-realty items addendum and you turn the non-realty items addendum into the lender now has to come up with a price that they're willing to lend upon based upon those items. If you do a bill of sale, or let's say that you're not going to like raise the price or anything like that, those things are just going to convey with the home.
Yeah, you're throwing it.
Yeah, you're throwing them in. Now, if let's say that they wanted to buy the refrigerator, but that was a point of contention, and they weren't willing to just give it away, but they wanted $500 for it, you could do a bill of sale, and the funds could change hands between those two parties. The lender would not be involved with that.
Okay, so I've got a listing right now where they want to leave the washer and dryer. Now, I know in some cases people are going to come and go, I don't want that washer and dryer, it's too old. So, but let's say the people that buy the house go, sure, we want their washer and dryer. Is it incumbent upon me to then do that, document the bill of sale to convey, or is it the buying, buyer's agent that's coming in, that they need to do that? You see what I'm saying?
The buyer's agent would need to.
Okay, that's what I figured. Okay.
Yeah. Or if you want to make it, let's say that they were coming with their own washer and dryer, they didn't want that one to be there, but your sellers didn't want to have to get rid of it. You would then create a non-realty items addendum for that washer and dryer so that it stays in the house once they move. And
Otherwise, you're moving it.
Otherwise, you're moving it.
Right. Okay.
In which case, if you need to borrow my truck, give me a call.
Okay, cool.
And his brother.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
take them, actually. Everybody can sell those.
Exactly. All right, sales price. What goes here?
Issue.
Sales price. There you go. So paragraph A, how much cash are they putting down? It's good to know. It's good to have had a conversation with the lender at some point in time before getting to this point, so you know A, how much cash they have to put down, or if they have to put cash down. If it's a VA loan, they may not have to put any cash down. And then next one is going to be B, the sum of all financing. Okay, so let's say that it's a $200,000 house. They're going to be putting 10% down, meaning $20,000. B is going to be $180,000. And then right here, you're going to, if there is financing, you're going to check one of these boxes. Most often, you're going to check this third-party financing addendum. The loan assumption addendum, you're not really going to have to worry about too often. If you get into a place where they want to do a loan assumption, come and talk to me and we'll walk through it together. It's not a very easy process. Or the seller financing addendum. Once again, if you're going to do that, come and talk to me and we'll walk through it together. Not too common will these things happen. And then finally, C, this is the sales price. So ideally, if you've done this right, A plus B should equal C. If you add A and B up and they don't equal C, go back and check your math up here. Something's not right. If there's going to be no financing involved at all, and you're going to pay cash, you're not going to have to worry about B. You're only going to put the cash price in here, and you're going to put the sales price right there. And as long as those two numbers match, you're good to go. Number 4, license holder disclosure. Texas law requires a real estate license holder who is a party to a transaction or acting on behalf of a spouse, parent, child, business entity in which the license holder owns more than 10%, or a trust for which the license holder acts as a trustee, or of which the license holder or the license holder's spouse, parent, or child is a beneficiary, to notify the other party in writing before entering into a contract of sale. Disclose if applicable. So if you're going to be representing mom or dad or your brother or your sister in a real estate transaction, that needs to go right in here. So I would put something along the lines of buyer's agent is my brother, or buyer's agent is the son of buyer. Something along those lines would need to go there. Or if you, or let's say that you are investing in a bunch of properties, and you have a group of investors that are doing it together, and you own more than 10% of that LLC who's investing in a bunch of properties, that needs to be disclosed here. If you own less than 10% of the LLC that's going to be investing in those properties, that doesn't need to go there. However, I always would like for everyone to err on the side of caution of over-disclose instead of under-disclose. Because even if you were 9.5 or 9.999% owner and somebody felt that they weren't treated correctly, I promise you there is a lawyer somewhere who would be willing to take the case. Here in Williamson County, if that case ever got in front of a judge, I highly doubt it. But it's always a risk you're taking. So it's better to over-disclose instead of under-disclose. Any questions about that paragraph?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you're representing and you're dealing with a new construction through a builder, they use their own contracts,
Yes.
but you're representing a family member. And you're reviewing the contract and you notice, even though you have verbally told them when you first got there, this is my child or my sibling or that I'm representing, and they're aware of that, they didn't write it in their contract.
That is completely different, and the reason why is because builders are their own companies, and they can have their own contracts drawn up on their behalf. They are representing themselves and themselves alone, and builders are not required to have real estate licenses in the state of Texas. Now, let's say that you're working with a small little builder and they don't have their own, they haven't had a lawyer draw up their own contracts for their company or something like that. There is a TREC form for new builds, and that this paragraph right here, I believe, is part of the new build contract. Yeah. All right, any other questions about that? Nope. Okay, earnest money. Upon execution of this contract by all parties, buyer shall deposit blank as earnest money with blank as escrow agent at blank address. It's a lot of blanks. All right, so first question, is earnest money required in the state of Texas? That's correct. It is not required for consideration. If you wanted to put up, I've used this example before, a chicken, you could, because it does not have to be legal tender. If you wanted to put up your motor home as earnest, not money, but as proof of earnest that you're sincerely interested in purchasing this property, and if you do not go through with it, you give my RV, that is completely acceptable. It does not have to be money. It does not even have to exist. If you don't want to put anything there and all parties are in agreement upon that, nothing has to be in paragraph 1. However, the majority of the time, the rule of thumb is 1% of the sales price. So based upon a $2,000 home, good luck with that. You might be shopping at Toys R Us. Based upon a $200,000 home, 1% is going to be $2,000. So you would put that right here. $2,000 is earnest money with what goes there? The name of the title company. Oftentimes this is confused. I see it happen all the time with the name of an individual at a title company. So with Susan at that address. No, it's as escrow agent. This is what confuses people because they think that the name of that person at the title company is the escrow agent. That is not true. When David was in here talking a little bit ago, he said there are 600 escrow agents in the state of Texas. Well, you and I both know there are way more title companies than that in the state of Texas, and there are way more title individuals, closers at title companies than just 600. So when it says escrow agent in the state of Texas, an escrow agent is Capital Title, it's TNT, it's Reliant, it's Independence, it's you name it, whatever title company you want. That is the escrow agent right there. And then, so you'll put, let's say you're working with Capital Title. With Capital Title, you'll put that there at, and this is where you're going to put the address of the location that you want to use. So Texas National Title, Capital Title, they've all got a bunch of different branch offices in the area. So you need to be specific upon which one you're using so that the earnest money is delivered to the right one. So you put that right there. And then this bottom paragraph right here, buyer shall deposit additional earnest money of blank with escrow agent within blank days after the effective date of this contract. If buyer fails to deposit the earnest money as required by this contract, buyer will be in default. Now this paragraph is often used for, let's say you've had some people that have come from out of town and they're going to be looking at properties and maybe they weren't planning on buying one. However, you did an awesome job and you helped them find like the perfect property. And they said, look, we want to put in an offer. Here's what we can do in earnest money. Oh wait, we only have $500 in that account, and that's the only account I have a check for right now. What you would do is you would put in, let's say that the amount was $2,000 again. You put 500 right here, and then you put the additional earnest money of $1,500 within. How many days is it going to take them to wire that money in, or how many days is it going to take them for them to go get a check, a cashier's check from their other account or something like that, and get it to the title company? That's what would go right there. That's what that paragraph is designed for. If you've got people who need to move funds around or transfer funds out of like their IRA or something like that to make it clear. Any questions about that?
How many days? I mean, what's the typical amount of time that you could give?
For which part? For that bottom part there?
Says it within
additional.
However many days? Yeah.
It depends. It's as many or as few days as all parties agree to.
Okay.
It could be 1 day. It could be, let's say that you're not closing for 45 days. It could be 45 days. It wouldn't really make sense to do 45 days because guess what? They're going to have to bring a whole lot more money to the table at closing. But it's as many or as few days as they want to agree to. And for the delivery of the earnest money, this is not a times of the essence paragraph yet. If you came to Avis as a contract class last month, you will know that it will probably be a times of the essence contract sometime after they vote on it in February, in which case it'll be 3 days unless it's unless there's a holiday, in which case it'll be the following business day after 3 days. The rule of thumb on this contract right now is 48 hours. And the reason why is because this is not a times of the essence contract, it is a reasonable amount of time paragraph. And Trek never defined a reasonable amount of time for this particular paragraph, but there was something else that they had done at one point in time where a reasonable amount of time for something else was determined to be a 48-hour period. So we, as our brokerage, use 48 hours as our rule of thumb for getting the earnest money to the title company. Obviously, if you go under contract on a Friday night, are you going to be able to get it to the title company on Saturday or Sunday? Probably not, unless you're best friends with somebody at the title company and they're willing to do it. If you get it there Monday morning, you're going to be fine. So, reasonable amount of time. Any questions about that? All right, paragraph 6. Title policy and survey. A title policy, seller shall furnish to buyer at blank expense. And you choose this one right here. In Texas, it's typical to choose seller's expense most often. Sellers pay for the title policy. Here in the state of Texas, that the reason being is Sellers originally wanted to provide proof that they had a good title on their home and it wasn't encumbered by liens or anything like that. So most often you'll see sellers that will be paying for this. So if you're writing up the offer, it's a good idea to go ahead and put sellers there. Now, if you're in a multiple offer situation and you know that there's going to be a bunch of offers and you want to give yourself the best possible outcome of getting your offer accepted, you may want to consider talking with your buyers about them paying for the title policy. Title policy on a home is about 1% of the amount of the home. So if it's a $2,000 home or the $200,000 home, you're looking at about $2,000 for this title policy right here. All right, so, and then this is where you're gonna put the name of the title company once again. And then we won't go through every single portion of this. You can go back and hit those things later. I want to go down to number 8, the standard printed exception as to discrepancies, conflicts, shortages in area, or boundary lines, encroachments, or protrusions, or overlapping improvements. Checkbox 1 will be amended, or no, will not be amended or deleted from the title survey. Or checkbox 2 will be amended to reach shortages in area at the expense of buyer or seller. So what does that mean?
That typically title companies accept to those scenarios. The typical title policy makes an exception for those things.
Correct.
So if you want that additional coverage, who's going to pay for it?
Exactly. So if you want the additional coverage, you'll put will be amended to read shortages in area, and you'll put at the expense of who. Now this right here is about 5% of the total premium amount. So if it's a $2,000 premium, 5% of that's what, $100? So it's about $100 coverage right here. Now, originally this was not part of the contract until I think it was like 10 years ago or so. It was added to the contract because this is additional coverage. And at that point in time, title companies were just adding the additional coverage to most policies without the consumer knowing they had the ability to choose whether or not they actually wanted to add the coverage. So that's why this ended up in there, because it's your choice as to whether or not you want to add those shortages in area or have them deleted. It's basically just a little bit of extra coverage that you're paying for here. All right, so commitment. Within 20 days after the title policy, or the title company receives a copy of this contract, seller shall furnish to buyer a commitment for title insurance. Commitment. And at buyer's expense, legible copies of restrictive covenants and documents evidencing exceptions in the commitment. Exception documents is what those are called. Other than the standard printed exceptions, seller authorizes the title company to deliver the commitment and exception documents to buyer at buyer's address shown in paragraph 21. We'll get to that in a little bit. If the commitment and exception documents are not delivered to buyer within the specified time, the time for delivery will be automatically extended up to 15 days or 3 days before the closing date, whichever is earlier. If due to factors beyond seller's control, the commitment and exception documents are not delivered within the time required, buyer may terminate this contract and the earnest money will be refunded to buyer. So this is just saying when the title commitment needs to be delivered. Survey. All right, so what's a survey? I don't know what a survey is, right? What's that piece of paper? Is it if it's a piece of paper and it just has a bunch of lines drawn on it and looks like it's a picture of the land, but it doesn't have a seal on it, is that acceptable?
Nope.
Exactly. It has to have.
Exactly.
We talked about this. It has to have the seal from the surveyor in order for it to be a valid survey. Is there a certain amount of time that a survey is good for?
Not really.
No, in the state of Texas, survey does not expire. Now, a lot of surveyors would like for surveys to expire because then their business would go up quite substantially. Best thing to do if you with a survey is when you get it, walk out the back door of the property, and if you see something that's a permanent structure like a pool or a slab of concrete or something like that, and it's not listed on the survey, ask for a new survey. Some title companies will allow you to just go ahead and draw that in based upon where you think it is. There's multiple thoughts about that. But if it doesn't match what the actual description is, or I think they used to actually use chains in order to do surveys back a long time ago. It's much more advanced than that now. If it's, I'd say if it's older than 20 years and it doesn't look quite like it should, ask for a new survey, but they do not expire. So this right here says within, you choose the amount of days here. I see oftentimes 3 to 5 days here. Within 3 to 5 days, or whatever amount of days you agree on, after the effective date of this contract, seller shall furnish the buyer and title company seller's existing survey of the property and a residential real property affidavit promulgated by the Texas Department of Insurance, T-47 affidavit. If seller fails to furnish the existing survey or affidavit within the time prescribed, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense no later than 3 days prior to closing date. So that's in bold for a reason. If you do not get the survey, you have every right, and it's not within those amount of days up there. You have every right to call a survey company, order the survey, call the title company who you ordered the survey from, and have the survey sent to, or have the bill for the survey sent to the title company so they can come off of the.
I'm not feeling well.
Okay, I hope you feel better. It'll be online later this afternoon.
Okay, it will be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if they don't provide it, you can have the invoice sent to the title company, and the title company will take that off of the funds that they would have been receiving at closing, because the contract says that you have the right to order the survey and they will have to pay for it. They've signed this document, they've agreed to do that.
Can I ask a question here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you don't get a survey, and you're saying you as the agent set that up, or should
The
you go to your?
have the buyers do it.
Okay.
Or, you can.
Do they want to do that through the title company, since, you know what I'm saying, it's got to be set up for deductions out of the proceeds?
Well, here's the deal. In the Central Texas area here, or the Austin, the greater Austin area, we have some amazing title companies here that provide high levels of service to us. And if we need a survey, we can call the title company and say, hey, we need a survey. And guess what? The title company will call the surveyor and they'll get a survey ordered. If you go out into the Killeen, Fort Hood, Harker Heights, and Passes, Burnett area, and you call the title company, you say, we need a survey. A lot of times the title company's response is going to be, well, then you should order one. I learned that.
You don't need to do.
Yeah, exactly. I learned that in selling homes up in Killeen. I sold several homes up there when I first got started, and it was it's the old West up there. It's a whole different ballgame. And I don't believe that they've ever taken classes on customer service. But that's just my
Okay.
opinion.
All right.
So, anyways,
I'll probably start with the title company.
yeah, if you're working in this area here, start with the title company. Just say, hey, per the contract, we haven't ever been delivered a survey. Can you order one for us? The title companies are going to say, yeah. In this area, they'll say, absolutely. We'll get that taken care of. All right, so now we know what to do here. And then right here it says, if the existing survey or affidavit is not acceptable to title company or buyer's lender or lenders, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense no later than, or seller's expense or buyer's expense no later than 3 days prior to closing. So this is a place where if they have an existing survey and they've given that to you and they provided the T-47 affidavit, most of the time the title company and the lender are going to go ahead and approve the old survey. There are exceptions sometimes where the title company will approve it, but the lender will say, no, Dice, I need a new survey. Or there have been times where the lender said, that's perfectly fine, but the title company said, no way, we need a new survey. This is saying who's going to pay for that. Oftentimes, the buyer's name will be checked here. The buyer will normally pay for the survey if the current survey doesn't meet their needs. So just keep that in mind. And then right here it says, number 2, within such amount of days that you've agreed upon, after the effective date of this contract, buyer shall obtain a new survey at buyer's expense. Buyer is deemed to receive the survey on the date of actual receipt or the date specified in this paragraph, whichever is earlier. So this one says, look, if you don't have a survey, I'm going to take care of it. I, the buyer, am going to take care of your survey because it's something I'm going to need to close anyways. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that cost. Or the next box number 3, within whatever amount of days you agree upon, after the effective date of this contract, seller, at seller's expense, shall furnish a new survey to buyer. So 2 and 3 just says who's going to pay if they don't have a survey, and everyone knows that. Yes.
So what happens, the buyers agree to get a new survey within 20 days or whatever, and it doesn't come in? It hasn't happened. Is that an out for somebody? I mean, you know, if the survey doesn't come in till, like you've got within 20 days of the date of you know, they're under number 2, or do you do an amendment?
Most of the time in that situation, what would happen would be an amendment just to extend it.
Okay, okay. Because that happened to me one time, and
But I believe that in the contract, and we'll go through it here in a minute, I believe that the contract can't automatically be extended for 3 days.
okay, so you're covered.
Yeah, you should be.
And
you
it's
should be
really
covered
not
in
something
that.
you'd want to
Yeah, I mean,
too much about anyway, but I'm just.
I
curious.
I would, even though there are protections in the contract for that, it would just make sense to, I mean,
What are you
everyone
gonna do?
wants the house to close.
Exactly.
You might as well just do an amendment and say, hey, look, we're waiting on the survey to come in. Because once you've ordered the survey and they're doing their thing over there to get it to you, you can't control how fast or how slow they work.
Right. Well, we were on the receiving end, we were the seller, and the buyer didn't get the survey done.
Got it.
And then she didn't send me an amendment or anything, but I was like, to my seller, I was like, well, what are we gonna do? I mean, we're gonna tell them, you don't wanna sell the house, or, you know?
Yeah.
So it was not an issue, I just wondered if there was something I was, you know, should know about in
Now,
that
if-
situation, but,
If it doesn't, I mean, you can't close without a survey.
Right.
So if the buyer is, if the buyers wanted to back out of the contract, they would have the ability to do so, especially if box 3 was checked and it
Right.
said within such amount of days after the
If we
effective
were
date of
paying
this
for it.
contract, seller at seller's expense shall survey, or shall furnish a new survey to buyer. If it's the seller who's responsible, you better believe that the buyer hasn't out of that contract.
right,
If it was the buyer who was responsible to make that call and they never did, somebody's probably gonna lose their earnest money. The seller will
Okay.
probably get the buyer's earnest money in that case, especially if
If
they
they-
never actually called.
it's, right, okay,
And if all parties aren't in agreement on closing anymore, that money could go to the, seller because the buyers haven't lived up to their end of the contract. Objections. Seller may object in writing to defects, exceptions, or encumbrances to title disclosed on the survey other than items 6A, 1 through 7 above. So those things that are up at the top that we didn't read, go back and read those things. Disclosed in the commitment other than items 6A, 1 through 8 above, or which prohibit the following use or activity. What do most people put here?
residential, but I've heard
Yeah.
I've heard both, I've gotten conflicting advice on that.
Yeah. You're being, in my opinion, you're being redundant by putting residential use there because this is a 1 to 4 family residential contract. This is one of those things that, the things that I would want to see there, like let's say that you're working with somebody and they said, hey, you know, we want to open a daycare out of our home and we're going to basically run that business out of there. And that's one of the things that's not allowed there, and it's not going to be able to be there. Or let's say that they wanted to raise goats or something like that. That if that comes up, then
Well, but I've heard, like, that for your buyer,
Mhm.
This is an opportunity to protect them.
it is.
So you might want to come up with something in there.
Yeah.
But that seems a little, I don't
You
know,
can
like
put
you're
something in
kind
there,
of
but-
reaching out into la la land to
Yeah.
do that.
If you're, if you're gonna put something in there,
Like build a pool.
yes, that would be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Build a pool would be a good one because there are some neighborhoods that don't.
Or store an
have pools.
RV.
Or store an RV. That would be things that would go right here. Residential use doesn't need to go there because guess what? The reason why residential real estate is so much different than commercial real estate is because when somebody buys a house, guess what we know that they're going to do with it, or that they should be doing with it. Either A, they're going to own it and they're going to live in it themselves, or B, they're going to own it and they're going to rent it to somebody who's going to live in it. Now, with commercial real estate, there's so many more factors at play. So let's say that in a commercial real estate transaction, you've got a client who wants to use it for some kind of oil manufacturing or something like that. And there's going to be a lot of environmental factors at play there. And you have sold them the property, and it turns out that there was one particular thing that couldn't be done at that property, and it was oil manufacturing. And now they own a piece of property that they cannot run their business out of. There's so many more factors that go into play with that than there are in residential real estate. Because in residential real estate, we know that somebody's going to live in the property, or somebody should be living in the property. And if they choose not to, that's on them. But this is a residential contract. Commercial contracts, they're much thicker than a 1 to 4 family contract because there's so many different factors that play into it.
So normally we just wouldn't put anything in there?
Well, no, you wouldn't need to put residential use there because that should be a given. I mean, I've seen it where other agents have come back and said, "Can you put residential use in there?" Like the seller's agent wanting that on the contract. If they insist upon putting it in there, go ahead. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to be a double negative. It's going to be fun. But like if you want to store an RV there, that should go in there. If you want to raise goats there, that should go in there. If you want to, what were some of the other examples?
Install a pool.
Install a pool, that should go there. If you want to,
A home-based business.
a home-based business, if you want to park your commercial vehicle in the driveway, that could go in there because there are some.
But then you have a
neighborhoods that
second
don't
out, like when the title documents come through or the HOA documents come through, you would have that in addition to those documents as 2 separate outs to the
That's
back.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, I don't want to overcomplicate this because what you get upon, that's a good, pretty.
Keep asking the question. I'm gonna grab a bottle of water, but I
Grab a
can't.
bottle of water. Okay, so the thing, let's say with a RV or whatever, if it goes, and so that you're putting that in the contract. So then at some point, that's supposed to be checked out by the title company in regards to the CCRs of association. So then let's say they don't allow you to raise goats. At that point, the contract can be negated, or see what I'm saying? The whole thing, or they can't park, and that might be a deal breaker for somebody who wants RV parking. So who at that point now is going to find that out for you in terms of the CCRs of let's say Sun City Homeowners Association or whatever.
That's gonna come across in the homeowner portion of it. This is gonna check like deed restrictions and things like that.
Okay, so but how's that? So okay, so it's deed restrictions or whatever, or maybe Williamson County restrictions or something, or.
Yeah, things like that are.
Okay, so now you say the other thing where through the HOA, how does that come about then?
Because there's a addendum for a mandatory membership in Property Owners Association, and that addresses the timeline and the time frame in which those documents need to be provided to you, so you can review them and make sure.
Okay, so that's incumbent upon the buyer to review those CCRs to find out. Okay, all right. I just want to check that out or something like that. Okay.
So I'm looking for a piece of property right now.
Yeah, for your people.
My people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they want to build an outbuilding, and they want to build a storage thing, and so obviously, choice. But coming across, it's going to have to be somewhere where there's no HOA. And
Or the HOA is very
Liberal.
lenient.
Yeah, exactly. Lenient.
Lenient, yeah. And you know, where I live, I happen to live where there's deed restrictions, but nobody withholds deed restrictions there because all the lots are built and the builders don't give a darn anymore.
Yeah.
So people have chickens and whatnot. So,
Now, technically speaking, a neighbor could go and file a suit requiring you to live up to the deed restrictions. Now, a good example of this would be Serenata. I don't know how many of you know this, but somebody decided they were going to put a double wide in Serenata about, is probably 6 or 8 months ago.
oh yeah.
And they went ahead and did everything. Well, there are deed restrictions in Serenata that say that's not going to work because the homeowners in there didn't want any manufactured homes like that in their neighborhood. Well, they didn't have to go, and I don't believe they actually made it in front of the court system. They got enough of the neighbors to sign on and do a demand letter to those owners, basically saying, you move it
Or we sue.
or we sue. And they ended up moving. So anybody in a neighborhood that they're part of, that they fall under those deed restrictions, has the right to enforce the deed restrictions. It doesn't just have to be the builder.
Yeah.
Now, going back to why were HOAs created?
To
keep people from doing double wides.
yeah.
Double wide, and then a regular.
Originally, homeowners associations were created for the builder because they were building a brand new community, and they wanted to make sure that it looked pristine while they were still trying to sell homes. The HOA does not actually go into control of the homeowners until the neighborhood's built out 51%.
Right.
Creates an HOA.
The builders.
Builders create.
The builders create HOA.
Developer.
The developer creates the HOA, yes.
So,
Homeowners could create an HOA.
Yeah, they could.
They could voluntarily go create their own HOA.
Yeah.
There isn't one.
They could, but the developer does developer.
What about a PID? You know, I was a member of the bid board in Georgetown Village for the first couple of years I was here. So, and that's sort of acting in the capacity, because the HOA over there in that area is inactive. There is one, but you pay about $100 a year or two, but they don't do anything.
Yeah.
And the bid board's doing all the maintenance and the things and developing the park. So, and I know that the PID board gets funded by Williamson County, but who's starting it? Is that a county started thing, or is the building behind that? Because I thought Green Homes would have started that PID.
That was part of when I was with the city. That's a statutory taxing district. Sets out a boundary area, just like another ad valorem taxing district of some sort. That's what that is. It's just the city. I know the city set that up
So Williamson County
Because-
then, yeah,
because, not the county, the city.
or Georgetown, yeah.
City of Georgetown,
Right.
because the developer wanted a higher level of public improvements in those areas.
I got you.
And so the residents get charged an additional tax to have antique street signs or improved parks, different types of public improvements.
It's the public version of a MUD.
Yes,
Right.
So, MUD,
which is for utilities.
the reason that a MUD district was created was so that cities didn't have to invest all of their time, money, and resources into developing the community. And in return, they put that up on the developer of the community, and they allow the developer to charge the tax onto that particular property or that subdivision or whatever it is that they've built that goes back to the developer for a certain amount of years, at which point the city can then take that land and, forgetting the word, make it part of the city. Annex it, yes. The city can annex it after a certain amount of time, after that tax has been completely paid to the developer. In California, you probably do it as Melrose.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So that's-
Sorry to sidetrack it, but
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
okay, good.
All right, so That's objections, title notices, abstract or title policy, broker advises buyer to have an abstract of title covering the property examined by an attorney of buyer selection, or buyer should be furnished with or obtain a title policy. If a title policy is furnished, the commitment should be promptly reviewed by an attorney of buyer's choice due to the time limitations on buyer's right to object. Now, that basically says, hey, you've paid for a title commitment, you've got some things in the contract that depend upon the title commitment, it's been delivered to you, you should probably look at it. Most of the time, do buyers go and have an attorney review this? No. Should you review it? Yes, you should absolutely take a look at it and see if there's anything in there that looks like it's awry. And if there is something that's going crazy on it, you need to call your buyer and say, hey, I see something that we should probably look into at this point. You definitely should go to an attorney and say, hey, what's going on here? There's something we see that's kind of fishy. Title notices, membership in property owners association. This is right here where you check is or is not. It's most of the time you're selling property in the areas around here, it's going to probably be in a homeowners association. There's several neighborhoods that aren't there too, so it's important to look. Now, if you go into the MLS and you're not sure whether or not it's a homeowners or a property owners association, just look at the other homes that are part of that area and see if any of the other homes have come up and they've marked in the MLS whether or not it's part of a property owners association. And then that's one of the biggest mistakes that's probably made in the MLS is you could have houses right next to each other and clearly someone probably probably didn't remember what they were paying for their HOA dues. You'll have like one that says $50 a month, another one says $25 a month, and you're like, how'd they get a deal that I didn't? When in actuality, they just didn't know what they're actually, how much it actually cost. Any questions about property owners associations?
Yeah, I mean, as a realtor, you are the one, not the title company. Sometimes it's hard about finding out if it's in an HOA.
You can call the title company too, but
sometimes they're not very obvious.
No, sometimes they're not obvious, and then other times it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
As soon as you drive into the neighborhood, you're like, nope, not an HOA, or this is an inactive HOA.
No.
But even if you checked that it's not, the title commitment should reveal
that it is.
It should reveal that whether or not it is, because there would be a document on record that they would pick up that would have established.
And the accompanying CCRs.
In which case,
Yeah.
if you check that it is not a member of a property owners association, and it turns out that it really is, I can promise you Mary Vitek is going to ask you to amend the contract to reflect that it is part of a property owners association. Because this is a protection for you. The reason why we want to make sure you're protected is because if they didn't think that they were going to have to pay anything every single month, and now it turns out that they are, we want to make sure that that's been disclosed to them before they actually move into the property, so they don't come back to you and say, hey, Sharon, I know this would never happen to you, by the way, but so they don't come back and say, hey, Sharon, you never told us we were going to have to pay $56 a month for a homeowners association. We didn't know anything about that. So this right here is a big protection for us too. Jamie.
One of the things that I learned is that there's a lot of fees that are associated with getting to the HOA certification transfer to a new buyer. So if you have a buyer that you're working with, maybe educate them that, that could cost anywhere between $400 and $600 just to have that certification transferred over to them, to the new owner. The reason why is because, there's no regulation with HOAs. And so so they're not, nobody is telling them how much they can and cannot charge. Some HOAs will require your buyer to pay for that up front. And others will let you pay for it at closing. So
You think
that's a lesson learned the hard way, just FYI.
I am confident that there will be a regulatory body in the state of Texas at some point in time that sets rules and guidelines for what HOAs
And
can
there
do.
needs to be.
Yes.
Yes, there
Yeah,
absolutely
because
does.
I was on one right now and it's not working and there's nothing you can do.
Well, that's
You have to
different.
take them to court.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is that will set, that, you're talking about enforcement of it.
Yes.
I'm talking about oversight and saying, here's what you can do as an HOA, here's what you cannot do. Because I don't know how many of you are part of the big real estate groups in the country, but there is one HOA in Auburn, California, that is really overstepping their bounds right now, in my opinion, and telling people that every single day from the hours of like 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, their garage door has to be open the entire day.
Has
Yes,
to?
has to.
Open?
Must be open, yes.
Well, I know there are outliers but if you've ever paid your money to one and not getting your money's worth out of it, I'm the biggest proponent of them that there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's my neighborhood where we have a Nazi who's in charge.
Yes. Yes, we do.
And people get fined for everything. You leave your trash can out 3 minutes after the garbage guys come, you're getting a notice.
I'd rather be that than it not working at all, and I'm still paying my money.
But that's enforcement of it. The oversight committee that I think we'll see is, here are the standards, like, because there's some HOAs out there that just keep going, like,
The
especially when
fees
they're
for
earning.
transfer.
Yes,
that
the
are
fees for
very high.
transfers, or if it's still under a builder's control and the builder says, hey, we realize that we didn't charge enough for HOA fees, there's no max amount that they can raise
Right.
the HOA fee. They can basically screw every single person and they say, well, it was $50 a month, but we decided that it needs to be $150 a month now.
And some of the transfer fees are outrageous.
Yeah. Yes,
They're
they are.
just, and that's where, to me, that needs to be limited.
I know that is something that would be regulated by the Real Estate Commission, and that is something that they have had a lot of conversations about.
Okay.
And TAR is very involved in wanting to put something together like that, because ultimately it's a protection for our consumers if we have some kind of an oversight committee mandating what they can and cannot charge for some of those transfer fees. And there's whole other schools of thought that that's something that the government shouldn't be involved in because they're private organizations and yada, yada, yada. But I think that at the end of the day,
And
it's
we may
consumer
not get to the to the addenda that go with all this, but I contacted the title company and for a very, very detailed explanation of the mandatory membership in HOA addendum, because the way it's worded is very confusing
oh, it is, yeah.
about who's gonna be responsible for what. And after about the third time of getting to the closing table and me having to have egg on my face about who pays for what on the transfer fee because of the way it's termed, the way the
Recertification.
is, yes, recertification, transfer fee, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I urge you to contact the title company and get that explained to you. I've written it all down, so I now understand
Avis,
it.
I have a video that I have not edited together yet. Avis did do a video on the
Okay.
Property Owners Association addendum. I will go into my archives and edit it
Yeah, the
together.
terminology is very misleading.
It
Well,
is
and-
very
And
confusing.
different HOAs call different things, the same thing, different terms.
And the
So
title
you
company
do
has to
have to
figure
know
that
that.
out.
Yeah.
They have to figure out what words fall under what description.
Yeah.
And it's confusing.
It is very confusing, and ideally, there would be one standard form where they would get to fill in the blanks,
Mhm. Right.
and then it would kind of be across the
That would be
state
nice.
of, these are the things that we do in our association, because we want to give them some creative freedom to kind of run it how they want to, although there needs to be some kind of hierarchy that is telling them, you can't do that. That's not right. So Terra Vista, you guys are familiar with that neighborhood, right? Well, there's a pool in there that that there's a lot of people want to just be an adult only pool,
Retreat.
the
The
retreat
little one.
pool. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Well, can they do that?
But we can amend something and make it that way, but it depends on probably how they're written.
My interpretation of it
Haven't written.
is that
Adult only as in just because they want people over a certain age, or they want like adult.
no,
That's-
no, they are not in Palm
Like,
Springs.
that's not, I don't think that's very, that's
No,
not
adult only meaning they call it the retreat pool because it's supposed to be a quiet pool. You're supposed to be able to sit there and never get splashed and
Okay.
really not
So
enjoy
you
the
don't have
actual
to
pool
listen to
portion. I have kids, don't listen to me. But my interpretation of it is because it is not an age-restricted community. They cannot actually do that because they're inhibiting the people who pay for
They're
that
paying for it.
associate, who pay for equal rights in that
Yeah,
entire
the families
property.
are paying for that too.
Exactly. So the argument then, if I owned a property in that neighborhood, my argument to them would be, well, are you going to reduce my dues every
Right.
single month because now you prevented me
Yeah, or
from being
move
able to use a
something, or
certain
move to-
But the
Yes.
problem
Part
is,
of the
you have to do that in court.
exactly.
The only recourse you have would
You're right.
be to take them
You're
to
right.
court.
Yes, you're right. But because it is not an age-restricted community, I do not believe that they have the power to do that, which is why I think that they have not done that. They originally, when Terra Vista first started, that was a pool that was designed just for people over 18 years old. Well, that changed because I think somebody had a really
Probably an-
strong conversation with
or
them,
an
telling them they
attorney
could not
again.
do that.
Who would have
Yeah.
done it for free?
Yeah, exactly. So, we got a little off topic, but
But it's-
HOAs are something you need to
Mhm.
pay attention to and know about. And if you want to get like the HOA documents and things like that about that, and let's say that your clients are just considering moving into that community. Most of the time, if you call your title company and ask them for the HOA documents, they've already got them on file because they've closed hundreds and thousands of properties. Chances are they've done one in there. They'll usually provide you with a copy of that so that you can review them before even considering that neighborhood. And it's important for it is on the buyer for the buyer to review them. But let's say that you've chosen an HOA or a condominium association, which is a whole nother ballgame, that doesn't allow pets at all. And you know that your client has 3 dogs and they buy the house, they haven't reviewed it, and who are they gonna come to first? They're probably gonna come to you and say, well, you didn't tell me that I couldn't have dogs, and now I just bought a $250,000 condo, and I have 3 dogs. I'm gonna
And you
sell
knew
them.
I had dogs.
You knew I had dogs, exactly. So, anyways, let's keep going.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get you on a tangent.
No, you're good, I appreciate it. Jamie and I live in the same neighborhood, so.
We know
when
said
I
Nazi.
said- She knew what I was talking about. All right,
Send her to my neighborhood.
hey,
No, they're
That's
ridiculous,
faster.
like to the point
I
where I'll
promise
walk,
you,
like with the
I
pair
could
of
get a
scissors.
petition in our neighborhood to have her move
I can
yours.
get
And I
one.
get about 90% of people sign.
Okay, we're ready for her.
Thank God this is not a public Facebook page. Facebook
I know.
most people do. All right.
That's hilarious.
Property condition, access, inspections, and utilities. Seller shall permit buyer and buyer's agents access to the property at reasonable times. Buyer may have the property inspected by inspectors selected by buyer and licensed by the Texas Real Estate Commission or otherwise permitted by law to make inspections. Any hydrostatic testing must be separately authorized by seller in writing. Seller at seller's expense shall immediately cause existing utilities to be turned on and shall keep the utilities on during the time that this contract is in effect. So if they didn't have utilities on when you look at the property, guess what? As soon as this goes into effect and everyone signed it, they need to be calling to get the utilities turned on because you cannot have a home property inspected without the utilities turned on.
Unless it's a foreclosure.
Unless it's foreclosure. In which case, different ballgame. Seller's disclosure notice to Texas Property Code. Buyer has received the notice or buyer has not received the notice. Within blank days after the effective date of this contract, Seller shall deliver the notice to the buyer, yada, 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 a bunch of other stuff. It's important, read it. But this basically just says, when are you gonna provide it to me and how many days are you gonna take to get it? And then number 3, the seller is not required to furnish the notice under the Texas Property Code. Texas Property Code lists 11 different instances in which a seller's disclosure is not required. If you're interested in what those 11 instances are, I did a video with David Durham on them, and we listed all of them and talked about them. So
Where's
that's
that?
it's on our Facebook page, and I'll put it on connectkw.com so that you can get it. It's at the very end of a 45-minute video where we talked about best practices for the contract. All right, seller's disclosure of lead-based paint and lead-based paint hazards is required by federal law for a residential dwelling constructed prior to what year?
1978.
Good job, 1978. That was a test question, right?
Was it? Absolutely. It says, also here in California, that's a national test.
It is a national thing, yes. It says prior to 1978. We require it in our office on everything that was built 1978 and after. The reason why is because I know and I can promise you that there are companies out there who built homes and had paint left over from 1977 that still went and painted it in 1978. So we'd rather you just cover the year 1978 and not just 1977 before. All right, so acceptance of property condition. As is means the present condition of the property with any and all defects and without warranty except for the warranties of title and the warranties in this contract. Buyer's agreement to accept property as is under paragraph 7D1 or D2 does not preclude buyer from inspecting the property under paragraph 7A, from negotiating repairs or treatments in a subsequent amendment, or from terminating this contract during the option period, if any. So this basically just says you're accepting it as is. However, you still have the ability to negotiate repairs or anything that needs to be done during the option period. Now, then it gives you the ability to check one of two boxes. Number 1, buyer accepts the property as is, or number 2, buyer accepts the property as is, provided seller at seller's expense shall complete the following repairs and treatments. So we'll go there.
The hot mixer was installed.
Okay, you do that before you went under contract?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that would be something that you could put there and just say, hey, I already realize that that's something that is a deal breaker for us. You must agree to it before we're even willing to enter into a contract with you. Or
Windows not sealed properly.
that could be something as well. Most of the time that you're gonna see here is like if you walk up to the house and the roof is caving in or something like that, it's just very apparent that the roof is gonna need to be replaced. You'd want to put that there like right off the bat, because then number 1, you haven't spent any money on option money. You're telling them right up front, these are my non-negotiables. These are, in order for me to buy your property, this has to be done. Or let's say that you've walked into the house and there's 7 doorknobs missing, and you want to make sure that those are there. You would put that here off the bat because it's something that you don't need an inspector to tell you.
That's the difference, that's the purpose is,
Yes,
is you know it right now.
It's blatantly obvious.
Okay.
Anything that's visible that you don't like.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that doesn't waive, you don't waive your rights.
You don't waive your right to anything else.
To
You
anything
can
else.
still get it inspected. You can still negotiate everything
Right,
else.
yeah.
This is just the blatantly obvious.
And I'm not even going any further unless you
Correct.
agree.
If you're not going to fix that, I'm not buying the house. If you agree to fix it, guess what? We'll continue through. That does not mean that I'm not going to get it inspected.
Yeah.
I'm still going to get it inspected, and we may still be negotiating other items. These are just my non-negotiables. The other thing that most often would go here that a lot of people put in paragraph 11 and they shouldn't is home to be professionally cleaned. That's where this should go if they want it professionally cleaned before they move into it. This would be the place.
That should go there. What?
Was paragraph
Why?
11?
Paragraph 11 is special provisions.
And it shouldn't go there.
It should not go there. It should go here. Because you're accepting it as is, provided the seller at seller's expense shall complete the following specific repairs and treatments. So it's not just repairs, it's treatments too. So if they want the carpet shampooed, it needs to go here too.
The seller could always counter and say, I'm not gonna do that, but
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
$500 off the price of the home, or whatever.
Yeah, and whatever they agree to, you're still in the negotiation portion of this.
Right.
However, if all the parties agree to it, and this is in there, then they're obligated to do these things, and you can still have the home inspected, and you can still negotiate any other things that need to be done. Make sense? What's that?
We're just talking about,
I always put it in my repairs, the amendment or
Yeah.
addendum or whatever, but I'm gonna put it here from now on. I always forget to put it there.
I always put it there too, because then you're guaranteeing it. If they agree to it right up front, you guaranteed it.
Yep.
And it's always nice to move into it later.
What's the policy regarding termites here?
What about it?
I mean, do you have, like in
Termite-
California, loan companies, most of them are requiring you to do termites.
It is not a requirement in the state of Texas unless you're using a VA loan.
And they
If you're using
require,
a VA loan, it is required, and it's required to be paid for by the seller.
Right, yeah. Now,
The treatments, on the other hand, doesn't matter who pays for those, but the inspection has to be paid for by the seller.
right. You know, so if you were gonna do a termite, which I would say, somebody's buying a 20-year-old house, it's probably a wise idea. Would this be the place where you put that?
Yes.
Okay. Wow, see, I hadn't really seen anything about termites here, so that's why I was asking. I kind of figured it wasn't mandatory, but it's definitely mandatory, it's part of the contract in California.
I would encourage you to get a termite inspection because it's better to know than not.
We got them here.
Yeah, we do have termites here. It's not as prevalent as California. I'm not quite sure why that is. I know.
Who pays that?
The termite inspection?
Seller probably.
If it's a VA, the seller has to pay for it. If it's not a VA, it's usually like an extra $50 to $75 for them to inspect it while they're doing the regular inspection. Most inspectors do termite inspections as well, so they're just going to be looking for that while they're doing the regular inspection.
But they find the termites, and that's what's expensive there.
The sellers normally, the way I've always did it, sellers normally like to make the termite.
Completely negotiable.
Yeah.
Now, in California, it's different because the lender would make that a required repair. Here in Texas, they may not make it a required repair. On a VA loan, it has to be paid for. It has to be paid for by the seller, but the fixes for it, like let's say that they said that the fix is fumigating the home and they need a tent on the outside of it for, 48 hours or something like that. That could be paid for by the buyer. Most of the time, the buyer's agent's going to say, hey, we should probably get them to pay for it, but it really doesn't matter who pays for it, as long as somebody's doing it.
I just, like, if I was a buyer, so he's telling me it's gonna be $200 for termite, that would piss me off, so I'd get like, hey, let the seller pay for that, they're selling the house, man.
Exactly.
Or take it out of the food proceeds or whatever,
All right, so we're good on that?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, now you know what goes in there. Lender required repairs and treatments unless otherwise agreed in writing. Neither party is obligated to pay for lender required repairs. So there you go, right there, important. Neither party is required to pay for it. If it's a lender required repair, the lender doesn't care who pays for it. Somebody's got to pay for it.
What are some things you've seen?
Which
that
includes
you're-
treatment for wood destroying insects.
There you go.
If the parties do not agree to pay for the lender required repairs or treatments, this contract will terminate. If they don't agree to do it, will terminate, and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. So this is another out in the contract. And how many of you guys took the buyer out class with Reba? All right, we're gonna bring that back to the market
That's
center.
awesome.
Probably, yeah. Awesome class. We're gonna bring it back to the market center again and have her come and teach it because it's 34 different ways the buyer has the ability to get out of contract. This is one of them.
Okay.
Completion of repairs and treatments. This is also important.
Well, I have to go.
Go for it. You're good.
No, you
You don't have to apologize.
I just need the one.
Get out of here.
Oh, sorry you feel that way.
So this is another place where mistakes have been made, and you don't have to fill anything out here. It's just the understanding. Unless otherwise agreed in writing, seller shall complete all agreed repairs and treatments when prior to the closing date. And all required permits must be obtained and repairs and treatments must be performed by, this is important, persons who are licensed to provide such repairs or treatments or if no license is required by law, are commercially engaged in the trade of providing such repairs or treatments. So, in the state of Texas, you do not have to have a license to be a roofer. So, you couldn't just go and say, Uncle Joe, can you fix my roof? Unless Uncle Joe is commercially engaged in roofing here in the state of Texas, meaning one, he has his own company, or two, that's what he does for a living for someone else's company. He is commercially engaged in that activity. Plumbers are licensed in the state of Texas, so you would have to have a licensed plumber complete any plumbing repairs, or a licensed electrician complete any repairs. Now, if you know prior to putting the house on the market and prior to going under contract that there are certain things that need to be done, you can have a handyman do any of it. But once you're under this contract, it has to be a licensed person or somebody who's commercially engaged in that activity in order to fix it. Unless, this is the big unless, both parties have agreed in writing to let the seller do the repairs, or the seller's cousin do the repairs, or anybody who's not normally covered by this paragraph to do those repairs. That make sense?
And then you gotta get that in writing, I would say.
Yeah, you absolutely get it right. When this paragraph is in play and there's things that have been negotiated, ask for receipts. Why do you want to ask for receipts?
Proof of,
Yeah, number one, proof it's done. Number two, you move in the house and the repair was done 3 weeks ago and it ain't working anymore, and they had some kind of a 1-year warranty with their product. This should cover you, and having that the receipt should cover you, and having that person come out to address the deficiency.
So a septic tank would fall under plumbing, and therefore like a licensed plumber to do that, or? All right, because that would be year round.
No.
What about just somebody handling septic? Do they have to be licensed?
It'd be a septic person. It's, gosh, are septic companies required to have a license?
I think with the sanitation,
But it doesn't have to be a plumber.
Okay.
But I bet they have to be licensed with the county.
They have to be licensed with the county.
I would think, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
They do.
And the county has to come out and look at
inspect
it and inspect it before they give the final seal saying you're good to go.
Okay.
So if you get a new septic system installed, it has to be looked at by the county. And I actually sing with the lady whose husband is the inspector of all the septic systems in Williamson County. So
That's the on-site septic something, and then there's an addendum.
on-site septic system disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that should come up frequently, I would think.
It comes up fairly frequently.
Okay.
Even in some of the neighborhoods here, like Berry Creek, there's a lot of homes in there that are on septic.
Serenada's got
Serenada, yeah.
Anything that doesn't have to go to the city plumbing, yeah.
Yep. All right, so lender required repairs, completion of other treatments, environmental matters, residential service contracts. We know these oftentimes as home warranties. They're not a warranty, they're a service contract. There's nothing that's being warrantied on any of it. And this is where that would go. Basically, maybe when I first started, I'd see like $275 in here. But I mean, you don't get crap for $275 anymore. Minimum is like $375. Most of the time, I put between $5 and $550 in here because if you're going to get them a home warranty, at least make it one that's worth it. It's going to give them the opportunity to cover a lot. And if they have a pool or a hot tub or something like that, find a company that covers those things so that they have that additional coverage for like their pump or the pool equipment, because that can be pretty expensive. Broker's fees. This just says this contract is not to negotiate broker's fees at all. Those are completely separate agreements. Buyer representation agreement if you're representing the buyer. The listing agreement if you're representing the seller. Closing. The closing date will be on or before you choose the date here. Keep in mind that it says will be on or before. So put the furthest date out that's possible, and if all parties are in agreement, you can close any time before that. If for some if there's an act of God that happens and you go under contract today and all the stars align and everything, it happens to where you can close tomorrow, congratulations. But don't put that tomorrow is the closing date because then if it doesn't all close, you're going to have to go and get an amendment. So if you're anticipating closing on the 31st of the month, try not to do that, by the way, because that's like the busiest day of the month for the title company. Either do it a few days before that or a few days after that. That's what we need to go in there. Possession, when are you going to take possession of it? Most of the time it says upon closing and funding, or in accordance to a temporary residential lease promulgated by the Texas Real Estate Commission. Try to stay away from the temporary lease one, especially if you're the listing agent. Because if you let somebody move into the property before they've actually closed on it, and then turns out they couldn't actually qualify for it, now you've got somebody in there who's pissed off that they can't afford the house that they're currently living in, and unfortunately there are some people out there who take that out on the home and not on their past life choices. So try to do upon closing and funding as often as possible, unless you're representing the buyer. If it ever comes to the temporary lease, come and see me and I want to help you work through that, especially if you're working on behalf of the seller.
Well, I had a situation last year that when my mom got her house in Sun City, the people that sold the house said, well, we've got a couple day grace period. And I just went in and said, no, you don't. You don't need grace period. The deal's closed, right?
Yeah.
So, I kind of had to go in there and rattle some sabers, and we wound up, they did get 2 extra days because they weren't ready to go. But they said, well, we talked to your agent. I go, well, the agent never talked to us about it, We got furniture in transit, so it can come up, obviously,
If there's something that's going to happen like that, get it in writing and use the tracker for it. Special provisions. What goes here?
Nothing.
Theoretically, there should be very limited amounts of things that go here. If it needs to, let's say you could fit the entire legal description, you could put the whole legal description here. If you couldn't fit the names of all the parties to the contract, that could go here. If it says insert only factual statements and business details applicable to the sale, TREC rules prohibit license holders from adding factual statements or business details for which a contract addendum, lease, or other form has been promulgated for mandatory use by the Texas Real Estate Commission. So basically, if there's a form for it, like gosh, I'm working on it. A non-realty items addendum, that use that. If there's the HOA form, use that. Anything that is addressed in other promulgated forms, use those. Don't put it here. And if anything goes in here, this is where a lot of agents risk practicing law. And the TREC doesn't like that. In all reality, the best way to describe your real estate license is that you have a limited license to practice law. What does that mean? You have a license to fill in the blanks. That's what a limited license to practice law truly means. If there's a blank for it and the Real Estate Commission has given you permission to fill in those blanks, you can do that. You have a limited license. Pardon me. Settlement and other expenses. What goes here? If you're asking for any closing costs, this is where it goes. So let's say that you want $5,000 in closing costs and you're going to include that in your offer. That would need to go here. So you put the number 5,000 right there. Or whatever other number you agree upon. And keep in mind these closing costs here. If let's say you've asked for $5,000 and it turns out that the closing costs for the home actually only come out to $4,500, your buyer doesn't get that additional $500 as credit. That just goes right back to the seller. It says that right here. So it says seller shall also pay an amount not to exceed $5,000 to be applied in the following order: buyer's expenses, which buyer is prohibited from paying by FHA, VA, Texas Land Board, or other governmental programs, and then to other buyer's expenses as allowed. And it goes through all of the buyer's expenses that can be done there. It even continues on to the following page. But if there's a surplus of money, that doesn't go back to the buyer, it goes back to the seller. Does that make sense?
Right.
And it says right here, if any expenses exceeds the amount for such expenses to be paid to that party may terminate this contract unless other party agrees to pay such expenses. Buyer may not pay charges, fees expressly prohibited by FHA, VA, Texas Veteran Land Board, or other governmental loan program regulations. And that's why the lenders will normally send you an addendum for an FHA loan that basically outlines the expenses that your buyer is or is not allowed to pay for. And if they are or are not allowed to pay for them, it says that the seller must be paying for those expenses or somebody that's not the buyers. Durations, talks about taxes. Winter taxes calculated upon. Winter prorated taxes calculated upon. Closing date. So the seller pays the taxes all the way through the end of closing day. You close at 10 o'clock in the morning, the buyer is not going to be paying for any taxes on that day. The seller pays for that entire day's worth of taxes. The buyer starts paying the taxes the following day after the loan has funded. Casualty loss. This just says this paragraph came into play a lot back during Hurricane Harvey. It just says if the property is damaged or destroyed by fire or other casualty after the effective date of this contract, seller shall restore the property. And it tells them that they have 15 days, that the contract can be extended 15 days in order for them to make those changes. Now, in the case of Hurricane Harvey down in Houston, 15 days was not going to cut it to extend the contract. So there were a lot of contracts that fell out of place during that time. Mediation, this just says before we go and sue each other, we're going to go to mediation first. We're going to save as much money as possible, and if after mediation things don't work out, we can sue the pants off each other if we want to. Attorney's fees, who's going to pay them? It says escrow, talks about all the escrow things, how things are applied, any damages, and that's all addressed in the escrow. Originally, it talked about how, like, if sue, it used to be for damages, it used to be 3 times the amount of the earnest money. Well, in 2015, when they passed our most recent contract, that was taken out. It was kind of like the velvet hammer of the whole thing. The most you could sue for was damages up to 3 times the amount of earnest money. That's been taken out now, so you could basically sue for any damages, and there's no max amount that you can go to. Representations, what's that?
This is nice, yeah, it's still in California, it's still 3 times.
Representations, all covenants, representations, and warranties in this contract survive closing, meaning they continue. If any representation of seller in this contract is untrue on the closing date, seller will be in default. So if at the point in time of the closing date, the seller has lied about something or has not been truthful about something, otherwise known as lying, the seller will be in default. Unless expressly prohibited by written agreements, seller may continue to show property and receive and negotiate and accept backup offers. So unless you've agreed that the seller will no longer show the property once you're under contract, that seller can keep showing the property all day long to anybody who wants to see it, and they can accept the backup offer. Or if you put an offer with a contingency, then the seller can accept another offer, and if the second offer doesn't have a contingency that they're dealing with, they can come to you and say, we now have another offer that doesn't have a contingency. We're notifying you, your time starts now to let us know whether or not you want to proceed without your contingency. So there's a whole other addendum for that. Pardon me. Federal tax requirements. A seller is a foreign person as defined by applicable law, or if seller fails to deliver an affidavit to buyer that seller is not a foreign person, then buyer shall withhold from sales proceeds an amount sufficient to comply with applicable tax law and deliver the same to the Internal Revenue Service altogether with appropriate tax forms. Internal Revenue Service regulations require filing written reports if currency in excess of specified amounts is received in the transaction. So this is one of those places where it gets a little funky. If the person who owns the property is not a legal citizen of the United States of America, the taxes that they would have paid based upon the sale price of the home, if they weren't calculated correctly, the IRS could then come to whoever bought the property and say, guess what, you're responsible for paying the taxes because they didn't. And this property is what we have to hold on to. And they can put a lien upon that property if you don't have the money to pay the taxes on behalf of the person who owned it before you that was not a legal citizen. It's a pretty funky portion of the contract. All right, notices. Make sure that this is filled in with legitimate information, or at the very least, the person you're representing. So if you're representing the buyer, make sure that their contact information is on here correctly. This is probably one of the places where it's not filled out right, or sometimes not filled out at all. It's so important to fill this out, because this is where the title company will be sending the extremely important documents to, like the title commitment and the any other documents that they need. This is where they're sending it to. If you, I've seen it a ton of times where the agent doesn't want the other party to have their client's contact information, so the agent will put their contact information in here. Don't do that, because if the title company is sending you the commitment and you've not opened it or you've not forwarded it to your clients, guess who's going to be in trouble? Come up and they no longer have an out of the contract and something in that commitment wasn't right. You're going to be responsible for that. So make sure that it's the right
Should we fill
information.
all the information in, even if, like, should we put their mailing address, even if they just want the information by email?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the reason why is because,
I
let's
always
say,
do that. I had
yeah.
an agent tell me, well, they don't want to receive it by mail, so I just put the email address in there.
well, Mr. Buyer, what happens
Yeah.
what happens if you lose your phone and your password was stored on there or something like that? You still want to
I
be able
just
to get
thought
that
that was kind
information,
of
right?
like, okay.
And then make sure the phone number's on there. Fax,
Yeah.
don't worry about that. I think that on the new contract, the fax line is actually just gonna be completely gone, because nobody really knows that. And then, email, make sure that they have the right email address on there. And then 22, any addendums that are gonna be part of the contract. If there's a third-party financing addendum, you need to check this box. If you don't check this box, it's not part of the contract. Seller financing addendum, you're not gonna, this is the boxes you're gonna see most often. Addendum for sale of property subject to mandatory membership in a property owners association. Addendum for sale of other property by buyer. If they need a contingency, you're gonna see this one. You're gonna see this one pretty often. Sometimes you'll do a backup contract. If you've got an addendum for coastal area property here in this area, we've had something catastrophic happen, and we got other things to worry about. So yeah, those are the most common ones here. Obviously, there's the short sale, seller's temporary residential lease, and if those things apply, then check.
So, what's the procedure for taking backup offers?
Everything is the exact same as if it was a regular contract. The only difference is typically the earnest money will be a little bit lower,
Right.
and the option money will be lower as well. And then you'll fill out the backup contract form.
Right.
And keep in mind that if you are doing a backup contract and your backup offer is accepted and becomes the contract, you never get your option money back. You're paying for the ability to back out of that contract. And your option days don't start until you become first, but you never get your option money back. You're paying for the option to be able to back out of the contract. So everything else is the
What's the
exact same.
normal fee on something, option fee for something?
About $50.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then a lot of times earnest money, instead of it being
1%.
$2,000, will be like $250 to $500, and then you'll add additional earnest money when you become first.
Okay, so then that you that you take the backup offer and then you
You execute it and everything, and you deliver the earnest money to the title company.
right, but
And
when you
the
say
contract.
execute it, the
All
seller
parties
says-
sign off, and
Okay,
yeah,
so then that goes into effect if your primary offer falls out.
correct. It goes into effect immediately as soon as everyone's notified that the first person
Okay,
has backed out.
so you can do that with several backups then, I would think.
Yeah, you could stack as many backups as deep as you want.
Right.
You just have to remember backup 1, backup 2, backup 3,
Right,
backup
okay.
4, backup 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right. And then finally, termination option. Don't miss this one. I've seen it missed several times. Thank God nobody in our office has missed it. But how much is the option fee going to cost? In this area, I see typically $200 to $250, depending upon the house and the neighborhood you're in. And then 7 to 10 days, often there. And then make sure you check this one: will or will not be credited to the sales price at closing. You might as well check will, because if they're going to be paying $250, at least let it credit towards the sell price of the home. And then if there's any attorneys involved in this work, their contact information is going to go. And then finally, once all the parties have signed off and everything has been agreed to, you're going to put in the executed date of the contract. That's once everyone has signed and it has been delivered back to you. And then, so the last person who gets the last signature on it is the one who's going to execute it.
I've been argued with on that too, like somebody, like the contract gets signed on a Sunday night, but can you put the effective date tomorrow? And, make it the effective date Monday so that their option period, doesn't start Sunday, it starts on Monday. And I mean, I was told, no, it needs to be the day that everybody finishes signing.
That's the way that it should be. If all parties are in agreement of it not being executed until the following day, there's nothing wrong with that. However, it should be the time, once it has been solicited and they're electronically signing it.
Right, and those date stamps are on there
And you, the agent, have been notified by .loop
on
that
Sunday night.
they've just signed it. It needs to be executed by you that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've stuck to it, but
Yeah.
I just wondered.
And then this one right here, we're 3 minutes over, I'm sorry guys. This right here, if you're only representing the buyer, your information goes here on the left side. And we don't do the sub-agent. We just don't do that. Buyer only is buyer's agent. If you're representing the buyer, Keller Williams Realty, 9004001, Daphne,
Yes.
licensed supervisor's associate, me, other broker's address, that's us, 823 South Austin Avenue, City, Georgetown, Texas, 7866. Your email address, I guess my battery died. You're the agent. Now this over here on the right side, the listing agent's information is going to go there unless it is a intermediary transaction you've done. So the buyer is represented by Keller Williams Realty Georgetown, and the seller is represented by Keller Williams Realty Georgetown. All the information is going to go here on the right side.
What's our license number again?
9004001. So listing broker firm, Keller Williams Realty Georgetown, 9004001. Then you'll check, because Keller Williams Realty is technically representing both of those people. You are our agent for our company. We are the broker. So you check seller and buyer's intermediary, listing associate's name, your name, licensed supervisor, me, listing broker's office, our office address here, city, state, zip, listing associate's email address, whatever your email address is if you're a listing agent, and then selling associate's name, let's say the selling associate's Kim, and then Kim's license number, licensed supervisor, selling associate. I get to go in there twice, guys. Selling associate's address here, city, state, zip, and then selling associate's email address and phone number goes right there.
And that's the same thing if I'm the buyer and the listing agent's in Round Rock.
Yes.
Because it's all under.
That is correct. Now, according to the law in the state of Texas, with the Texas Real Estate Commission, we are two separate brokerages. However, we would prefer that it all goes on the right side because Avis is the main broker. We are two separate brokerages in the fact that Round Rock has their own brokerage license number and we have our own brokerage license number.
Well, how would the top get filled out then? So, I mean, if I'm the buyer's agent and the listing
broker
agent's
firm, this is the way that I would fill it out. Listing broker firm, Keller Williams Realty, Georgetown, license number 9004001, and then I would put a box underneath there with the Round Rock license number as well, just to be safe. A lot of people make the mistake of putting Avis's name up at the top there. That's not what goes up there. It is the
I think what I
office.
did is I said, I put my information as the buying agent on the left,
That's okay.
and then the listing agent in Round Rock on the right, and put seller and buyer as intermediary.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that too. That would be okay. And then this one right here, you can put the commission that you're gonna be paid. This means nothing though. The thing that means something is the MLS. The MLS was originally created not as a beautiful place to look at homes, but as a agreement for commission between brokers. Originally, the MLS was a book that was thrown into real estate offices. It didn't even have pictures at the time. It had property addresses and commission notes. That's what the original MLS was designed for, just a commission agreement between brokers.
So portals?
What's that?
No portals?
No portals, believe it or not, no
Yeah.
portals. It wasn't even consumer facing. So if you were to go up to, let's say that you were a member of Actress, so the Austin MLS, and you went up to Colleen and you were gonna sell a home there, you would need a form called the broker-to-broker commission agreement. Because that's what would guarantee that you're going to get paid, because you yourself, unless you're a member of that MLS, are not guaranteed payment unless you are a member of the MLS. So that's important to realize. And then option fee receipt, that's gonna be filled in by the agent or the principal to the transaction. Never drop your option money off at the title company. We all know not to do that. And then contract and earnest money receipt. Realistically, the next rendition of the contract that's going to come out probably in May will have the receipts all on one separate page, and there will be 3 receipts. One for option money, one for receipt of contract, and one for receipt of earnest money. Because sometimes the contract is delivered before the earnest money is. So there will be 3 different receipts on the next contract. Anyways, if you've enjoyed the class, my name is Scott. If you haven't enjoyed the class, I'm Catlin.
How long do you have to get your money to the chapter?
We go by a rule of 48 hours because that's considered a reasonable amount of time. There's no definite answer to that question. In the next contract, it'll be 3 days unless it's a holiday in the following.
All right, and what did you just say about the option?
It needs to be signed for by the agent or the broker on the other side of the transaction, or the principal. So you can drop it off directly to the seller if you wanted to do that. You have permission to do that.
All right, I
Thank
see.
you.
Oh, okay, because the option fees go to the seller rather than through a.
Correct.
Oh, interesting to know. Okay. All right, thanks, Scott.
But I have other agents drop them off at the title company all the time,
Yeah, they're not supposed
all
to do
the
that.
time.
And if you didn't go and pick it up, that would be on their agent because their agent has now cost them not to have an option.
So I don't need to worry too much about it. If they're doing